they call Finn a genius. The art department's golden boy, the prodigy who can do no wrong. Personally, I just think he's a loud, disorganized mess who doesn't take anything in life seriously. He breezes through critiques with a lazy smile, while the rest of us pull all-nighters just to survive. Unfortunately, the university administration decided we have to share the exact same locked studio room for our final graduation projects. Apparently, pairing the top two students would spark creative synergy. To me, it just feels like a cruel joke. Every single night follows the exact same exhausting routine. I sit at my desk, trying to focus entirely on my precise, calculated architectural drawings, aiming for absolute perfection and clean lines. And he just stands across the room, throwing random slashes of paint at a massive canvas, making an absolute mess, and somehow calling it a masterpiece. The constant scuffing of his sneakers and the rustle of his canvas are driving me insane. Finn, hey, Julian, you've been staring at that exact same corner for 3 hours now. If you press that mechanical pencil any harder, you're going to rip right through the paper, you know. Julian, it's called precision, Finn. Not all of us can just splash random colors around and hope the evaluation professors mistake it for deep, unbridled emotion. Some of us actually have to work for our grades and follow a plan. Finn, ouch. Cold as always. You know, a little bit of passion wouldn't kill you, clean freak. But hey, you're completely missing the big picture here. Before I could even tell him to get lost and leave me alone, he stepped right into my personal space. He leaned over my shoulder, blocking out the light from my desk lamp. He smelled strongly of paint turpentine, rich coffee, and an expensive, warm cologne. It was incredibly distracting, making my chest tighten instantly. Finn, look at your hands, Julian. You're shaking. You're trying so hard to make every single millimeter perfect that you're forgetting to let the actual drawing breathe. Here, just let go for a single second. His warm, paint-stained fingers brushed gently against mine as he reached down, sliding the mechanical pencil directly out of my frozen fingers. For a split second, the entire studio felt completely, utterly silent, and I forgot how to breathe. 3 days have passed since that night, and I'm completely stuck. The major graduation deadline is looming closer, and my main canvas is still mostly a blank, intimidating void. My hands feel incredibly heavy every time I pick up a tool, and every single line I attempt to draw looks completely wrong, forced, and lifeless. I'm running on 3 hours of sleep, completely exhausted, and drowning in self-doubt. Across the room, Finn is quietly painting at his easel. For once, he isn't humming a random tune, teasing me, or making a chaotic mess. He looks entirely focused, the warm studio light catching the edge of his jaw. It's a side of him I've never seen before, serious, dedicated, almost intense. Honestly, it's incredibly hard to look away from him when he's like this. Suddenly, he drops his paintbrush into a jar of water and begins walking over to my desk. I immediately brace myself for another sarcastic joke or a playful taunt, preparing for the worst. But when I finally look up, his expression is surprisingly soft. Serious, even. Finn, hey, take a break, Julian. Seriously, you've been staring at that blank canvas with absolute anger for the last 2 hours. You're going to completely burn yourself out before the evaluation even starts next week. Julian, I don't have the luxury to take a break, Finn. Unlike you, ideas don't just flow out of me naturally without effort. If I don't figure out the core concept of this piece tonight, I'm going to fail this entire semester. Finn, who says it's easy for me? Who says I don't struggle? The only difference between us, Jules, is that I don't let the fear of failing stop me from making the very first stroke on the canvas. He reaches out, his warm hand gently but firmly squeezing my tense shoulder. The unexpected warmth of his touch sends a sudden, sharp spark right down my spine, making me look up at him. Finn, don't think about the grades or the professors right now, Jules. Just paint something you actually care about. Paint something that makes your heart race. The universe clearly has a twisted, agonizing sense of humor. Just as Finn and I were finally breaking the ice and speaking like normal human beings, the campus building management blared an announcement over the speakers. An emergency power shutdown for building maintenance was forcing everyone out of the studio at midnight. We stepped outside the heavy front doors only to find the sky had completely opened up into a massive storm. To make matters significantly worse, I had completely forgotten to check the weather forecast and left my umbrella in my dorm room. I stood frozen at the glass double doors, watching the relentless, freezing downpour, mentally preparing myself to just sprint into the dark and get completely soaked. Finn, hey genius, you plan on growing gills out here tonight? Or are you just going to stare at the water until morning comes? I turned around with an annoyed sigh. Finn was standing right behind me, a small, black umbrella gripped tightly in his right hand. He gave me that familiar, lopsided smirk that usually drove me crazy, but his eyes were completely soft, lacking any malice. Finn, come on, get under here before you catch a total cold. My apartment is only a 5-minute walk from the eastern edge of campus. We can dry off there and wait out the worst of the storm. Every logical part of my brain wanted to say no. I wanted to protect my boundaries, to keep a safe distance from the one guy who knew exactly how to dismantle my defenses with a single look. But a sudden, icy gust of wind made me shiver violently, and before I could stop myself, I gave a quiet nod. The walk to his place was an absolute blur of rain and proximity. The umbrella was far too small to cover two fully grown guys. To keep me from getting wet, Finn reached out and pulled me tightly against his side, his arm firmly pressed against mine. Every time our shoulders brushed, a powerful jolt of electricity shot straight through my entire body, completely drowning out the sound of the raging storm around us. Finn's apartment was exactly like his art desk, chaotic, cozy, cluttered, and completely overwhelming to my senses. The rich smell of brewed coffee and dried acrylic paint hung thick and comforting in the warm air. The moment we walked in, he tossed me a clean towel and a ridiculous, heavily oversized gray hoodie to change into while my wet university uniform dried over the heater. Minutes later, I was sitting on his worn-out living room sofa, completely buried inside a sweater that smelled entirely like him. My heart refused to settle down, beating rapidly against my ribs. I felt exposed, entirely defenseless in his personal space. I looked up from my hands to see Finn sitting across from me on a small wooden stool. He didn't say a single word, which was entirely unlike him. He just held a sharp charcoal pencil, his eyes intensely shifting between my face and a small sketchbook resting in his lap. He was drawing me, his gaze scanning every line of my face. Julian, Finn, what exactly are you doing? Stop staring at me like that. It's making me incredibly uncomfortable. Finn, don't move, Jules. Just give me a second. The light from the desk lamp is hitting your eyes perfectly right now. I don't want to lose this frame. His voice completely lost all of its usual playful mockery and teasing edge. It was deep, incredibly quiet, and entirely serious. The silence in the small apartment became heavy, thick with a sudden, suffocating romantic tension that made it hard to move. Finn, you know, you're always trying so hard to hide behind that cold, perfect wall of yours. You try to be so invulnerable. But right now, sitting here, you look absolutely beautiful. My breath caught completely in my throat, my mind scrambling to process his words. Before I could even attempt to form a coherent reply or push him away, Finn set his sketchbook quietly on the floor, leaned forward across the small space, and gently began to close the distance between our faces. The next morning, the heavy rain had completely cleared away, leaving behind a crisp, quiet campus bathed in early morning light. We didn't talk about what had almost happened in his apartment. The heavy, lingering silence followed us all the way back to the university gallery for the final graduation evaluation day. The art gallery was absolutely packed with nervous students, strict professors, and outside critics. I stood tightly by my own structural architectural piece, receiving polite nods and critiques, but my eyes kept scanning the crowded room, desperately searching for a flash of messy golden brown hair. I couldn't focus on my own success. Then, a massive crowd began to gather around the center exhibit of the gallery. Finn's final project was finally being unveiled to the public. When I squeezed through the crowd and caught sight of the massive canvas, my breath completely left my lungs, and my heart stopped. It wasn't a chaotic, messy splatter of abstract colors like his usual work. It was a stunning, breathtaking oil painting of me. Me, sitting at my messy studio desk late at night, captured beautifully in a halo of warm lamplight. He had painted me looking focused, vulnerable, and completely alive. The The small title card beneath the frame read simply, "My Precision." I slowly turned around, and there he was, standing right behind me in the crowded gallery. The playful, confident smirk was entirely gone, replaced by a nervous, hopeful vulnerability as he waited for my reaction. "Finn, I told you last week, Jules. I only paint the things that actually make my heart race. And nothing makes it race faster than you." For the first time in my life, my cold, defensive walls didn't just crack, they completely shattered into pieces. Slipping my hand firmly into his, right in front of everyone, I looked at his masterpiece, then back into his eyes, and finally let out a genuine smile. "It's perfect, Finn. Absolutely perfect."